Mr. Mayor, you are live.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Krista. All right, good morning, everybody. It's April the 25th. This is our executive committee meeting. I want to begin by acknowledging that we're in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And we honor the peace and friendship treaties that were signed many years ago. And thank everybody who's joining us today, and particularly folks from the Mass Casualty Commission. I'll begin just by making sure we have our councillors with us and that the audio is working. Deputy Mayor, are you with us? Deputy Mayor Lovelace?
Yes, I'm here from happy Hammonds Plains this morning. Great to see everyone.
Awesome, thank you. Councillor Hensby, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, committee, and go Bruins with the Drew Habs last night, huh?
Sorry, there was a mistake in the audio. I didn't get that, but I think I heard from Councillor Hensby anyway. Councillor Mason, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Morse.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and committee members. Very much appreciate the opportunity to hear from the commission this morning.
Awesome. Councillor Russell.
Good morning, everyone from Lower Sackville.
Awesome. Councillor Blackburn.
Hi, good morning from beautiful Beaverbank.
All right. I see Councillor Daigle Gammon is with us today. Good morning, Councillor.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to sit in.
Thank you for joining us. I'm not sure if there's any other councillors that I may have missed. If I did, we'll pick them up as they come in. Councillor Purdy.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity.
Good morning. Nice to see you, Councillor Purdy. Denise Schofield, I think. Denise, are you with us? You're our acting CAO.
I am, Mr. Mayor. Good morning.
Great to have you. The Honorable Marty Ward with beard and everything else. Marty, how you doing today?
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good to see you. We have Krista, who you've heard from. Katie Campbell, Ledge Assistant, is with us as well.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you. And other guests as well. Thank you all for joining us. We'll begin with the approval of the minutes of March 28th. Councillor Russell. Councillor Russell moves the minutes of March 28th, seconded by Councillor Deputy Mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approval of the order of business. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the order of business from those that were circulated to us?
There are no changes, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else with modifications? If not, would somebody move the agenda as presented?
Moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Blackburn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those in violent opposition, I see none. We have an agenda, thank you. Business arising from the minutes, none. Calls for declaration of conflict of interest. We have no motions of reconsideration or rescission. There's no deferred business. No tabled matters. Correspondence, Madam Clerk.
The clerk's office has received no correspondence.
Thank you. Any petitions?
There have also been none received by the clerk's office.
Okay, and none that council want to bring forward. Okay, colleagues, we're going to go right to our presentation. We're very pleased and honored to have the representatives of the Mass Casualty Commission. This is obviously one of the most important pieces of work that anybody in the province has undertaken in recent years. It's a big piece of work, and we appreciate the folks who are undertaking it. So we really appreciate you taking the time. I've been at a presentation before where we've heard some of the progress. That was a while ago, so I very much look forward to hearing what you have to tell us and for this presentation. So who will be leading us off on this? And I'll just look for somebody to step. Sarah, is that you?
Yeah, I can get us started.
All right. Sarah Simpson, thank you. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everybody for having us. My name's Sarah Simpson. I'm Senior Communications Advisor with the Mass Casualty Commission. We do have a presentation for you today that will touch on the work of the commission, the process, and specifically as we move into what we call phase 2 of our work, what to expect over the coming months. So I'm joined today by Barb McLean, our Director of Investigations, and Emily Hill, our Senior Commission Counsel. And I'll turn it over to Barb to get us started.
Great.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you very much for making time to hear from us today. I'm going to start us off. If I could have the next slide, please, whoever's in charge of the slide. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. This slide is meant to be a quick summary of the Commission's role, which is outlined in the orders in council from both the province of Nova Scotia and the federal government. So in short, the Commission is tasked with investigating what happened on April 18th and 19th of 2020. And from that factual basis, looking at those broader contextual and related issues, what I call the systems and the other aspects that either enabled the mass casualty to happen or failed to prevent it. And so I think what's important on this slide is the fact that even though our commission is being led by a former justice of Nova Scotia, the commission's not a court of law. It's not an adversarial process like you see in a court of law. It's not punitive. In fact, the Mass Casualty Commission, like other public inquiries, is not tasked with determining either civil or criminal wrongdoing. It's really forward-focused and looking at broader issues and making recommendations to address what needs to be done to correct those broader issues. The next slide, please, is a quick overview of our commissioners and our values of independence, respect, and transparency. And what I'll say here is we're committed to these values in delivering on our mandate. They guide our work, as does being evidence-based, trauma-informed, restorative, and collaborative. And in fact, being trauma-informed and restorative are written right within the Commission's mandate. Next slide, please. So this slide is a busy slide, but it's got a lot of pertinent information in terms of it's meant to show how we've approached delivering on our mandate through a series of overlapping phases that build upon each other. So as seen on the left hand column of the slide, you'll see the arrows that feed into each phase. And these phases are numbered 1 to 3, really for reference purposes. And as I mentioned, build upon each other. So looking at the bottom left of the slide at what we're calling phase 1 in the green box, this is really where the Commission is currently focused and has been focused. And it represents our work in piecing together that factual foundation of what happened through our independent investigation. And really what it's meant to do is create that baseline of information about what happened so that everyone has that understanding, baseline understanding. And this work incorporates the perspectives of those most impacted, those called to respond to the mass casualty, as well as community members, and has included working with participants to organize massive amounts of information so that it can be shared with the public during the public proceedings, as well as posted on our website. Phase 2, in the middle of the left-hand slide, also in green, because that's meant to show that while the Commission has been working quite diligently on this phase, the public proceedings for this phase are about to start. And this is where we shift our focus from establishing the what happened and begin to consider how and why the mass casualty occurred. This work involves an examination of those broader contextual and social issues that are within the Commission's mandate, such as access to firearms, support to those most impacted, public alerting, those types of elements within our mandate. And phase 2 does involve hearings like we've been seeing over the past few months, as well as roundtables and small group sessions. Our first roundtable is scheduled this week, and the work of phase 2 will continue throughout the late summer. All of this work leads up to phase 3 at the top corner, which also involves public proceedings that include community and stakeholder sessions, as well as the ability for the public and participants to submit their input to the commission, all of which will help inform our findings and recommendations to help keep Canadians safer in the future. So I want to switch to the next slide and sort of talk about the scale and the scope of the commission's work. This is the work that's been going on behind the scenes, and it's really meant to illustrate our workload associated with our independent investigation and work that's been taking place in consultation with participants. It's really designed for completion within an ambitious 2-year timeframe. So while it's titled Scale and Scope, I would also add the word complexity as well. So as part of our independent investigation, the Commission's been gathering information about what happened, about why and how the mass casualty occurred. So there are 17 crime scenes, and I can tell you, based on my experience, the documentation and disclosure associated with one crime scene these days is significant, which is why the following numbers are so large. So the Commission has gathered over 50,000 documents, much of which includes the work of the RCMP for their H-Strong investigation, but it also includes information from other sources, such as the Canada Border Services and social services, to name a few. And these include things that you would expect to see as part of an investigation: statements, transcripts, police notes, radio communications, photographs, videos, as well as policies, procedures, and training, which would go beyond the H-Strong investigation, but are necessary to advance the Commission's mandate. Some of these documents are only 1 page, others are over 1,000 pages, and everywhere in between. We've also viewed over 1,000 images, both video and photograph. And again, some straightforward, but some of that video is hours and hours in length that have required tedious, labor-intensive effort to view, to locate key information. We've conducted over 200 interviews, and this goes above and beyond reviewing the transcripts of the interviews that the RCMP conducted as part of their work. Our investigation has identified people who've never spoken to the RCMP, and people have come forward to speak to the Commission, and I am very grateful for that, and we continue to do that. We are continuing our investigation even as I'm speaking to you this morning. The Commission has used subpoenas to obtain documentation, and that's a usual way that a public inquiry obtains information. It's a means by which the Commission identifies the documents that it requires. The document holder can know that it has produced the information to the Commission, and the Commission can know that it has received the information that it has requested. We've issued over 70 at this point, and a subpoena often involves a request for more than one document. In fact, subpoenas have appendices with pages of documents that are being requested. I think it's important to note that in receiving the disclosure did not come in nice, neat packages. For example, all the documentation associated with each scene. There's been, you may have seen some of the presentations done by Roger Burrell and Anna Mancini on behalf of the Commission, but it's required a massive amount of effort by Commission members to sift through all the information that we have so that we can make those presentations, create that timeline in a way that is understandable and digestible to the public so that it can assist in the Commission's mandate. Given the scope and the scale and the complexity, it's not surprising that we have 61 participants, and participants include the families of those deceased as well as survivors and anyone that has a direct and substantial interest in the Commission's mandate and can help the Commission meet its mandate. And finally, something that you will see in our phase 2 work is reliance on Commission reports. I'm going to be saying a little bit more about that a bit later, but they're reports that are deep examinations of some of the issues within the Commission's mandate, public policy, lessons learned, those types of things. And all of this information will be used to inform the Commission's final recommendations and findings. So I'll now turn it over to Emily, who will talk a little bit about foundational documents.
Thanks, Barb. We can go to the next slide, please. So foundational documents are a tool that are used by public inquiries to organize and share the information. As you heard in that last slide, and as Barb has explained, the mass casualty has received a great deal of information, and it wanted to find a way to share that information with the public in a way that would make sense and would be able to allow the public and participants to move with us through the material. Certainly, we didn't want to have a situation where all of the information that we had gathered wasn't shared with the public until the end in the final report. And so foundational documents have been created and made available through the process. They are done in a collaborative way. So Commission Council working with the investigative team, research and policy, working with the whole Commission Council and Commission team, put together these documents, but in draft form, and they're shared with participants who have the opportunity to provide feedback, let us know where they're seeing errors, gaps, questions that come up for them, areas that require further investigation, and we're able to fold in that feedback. They're not findings of fact, they just reflect where we are in our work so far. So the findings of the Commission will be produced in the final report down the road, but the sharing where we are and what we know now was important. I think Barb especially had the experience of going out to open houses, speaking with members of the public early on in our work, and I'm sure that's been your experience as elected officials. And there were so many questions that Nova Scotians had about what happened, and so we realized we had to start organizing and sharing the information as soon as we could. And so that is what we've done through these foundational documents. And you'll see the steps laid out at the bottom. And you'll see that the final step is the final step is not presenting them. That's being done at step 4, and we are presenting the documents. But as issues come up, as we learn new information, as we come to understand things more deeply, we can update documents and make changes as needed. For the next slide, please. These foundational documents fit in with where we are in our process. We are continuing to work on the what happened piece. And as we move in from phase 1 to phase 2, it's not that one automatically ends and then the next one begins. We are still building the factual foundation piece by piece, and through foundational document, each one that we share gives new additional information and builds on the information that's been made available in the last one. And we try to present it to the public in a way that highlights what to us seems important, and what to the Commission and to what the participants have identified are key themes and questions that are developing, so that we know where our work has to focus as we move into the next phases. Part of the what happened phase of our proceedings involves the presentation of foundational documents, but it also involves the presentation of technical witnesses. So witnesses who have a lot of information about particular aspects of, for example, technology that was important during the mass casualty, and that needs to be explained so that we can understand what happened over the course of April 18th and 19th, what the response was, and what questions arise, what we might want to make recommendations for to make changes. We're also hearing from fact witnesses about what happened, who can share their perspective or fill out some of the context that's needed to make sure that we fully understand all of the different aspects of the what happened piece. That is all being done publicly. Our public proceedings are, now that COVID rules have been slightly relaxed, they are open to the public, and all the material and all of our proceedings are also being webcast. Next slide, please. The this slide shows us where we are with regard to the foundational documents that have been presented and the ones that continue to be presented. So the top row and a half, the darker green boxes, those are the foundational documents that have been presented so far. So you heard Barb talk about different scenes, different crime scenes. Those documents move through the different scenes of the events of the mass casualty and explain and organize the information that we've received so far. And that information has been presented in our proceedings. Those foundational documents are available on our website, as well as the source material that we relied on. So each document relies on innumerable, for example, witness statements, maps, GPS, transcripts. And so if you're looking at a foundational document, you can see how is the Mass Casualty Commission organized that material, what does it say about it, but then you can look and see under what the authority, so essentially what the cited documents are. You can click through and look at those documents yourself. And so that's the important piece of the transparency work that we're doing to make sure that everyone understands the material that we have collected and has a chance to look at it themselves if they have further questions. And then with regard to where we're going next, you'll see that the lighter green documents begin to move into some themes. These are foundational documents that reflect, again, what we know about these themes and these issues that are part of our mandate. So today at the proceedings, there'll be a presentation around the foundational document that's related to the perpetrator's access to the decommissioned RCMP vehicle, as well as the clothing and police, what we were calling police paraphernalia, as well as a document about what is known about the replica RCMP vehicle that were part of the mass casualty. Later on in the coming weeks, there will be a document about firearms. As we move through, you'll see a number of the foundational documents cover off important issues that we've been hearing about from the public as really important areas to need to know and understand and make recommendations about. Things like public communications, public alerting, things like that. So that we have a lot more foundational documents to share, but we have also shared a great deal of information. And these, as I say, build on each other as we move through the material. I think I'll pass back to Barb now to sort of talk a little bit about phase 2 as we're making that transition and a little bit about what's coming up next.
Great, thanks, Emily. And if I could have the next slide, please. So this slide's really meant to show that we are moving into the second phase. And as Emily mentioned, the presentation of foundational documents will now tend to be more topic or theme-based versus location-based, which is what we've been concentrating on until now. And many of these topics will blend the what happened with the why and the how it happened. And so like phase 1, phase 2 public proceedings will include presentations like we've seen. Commissioned reports will play a key role in this second phase. And as I alluded to earlier, these are reports that have been commissioned by independent experts to provide their insight into areas of public policy, of academic research, of lessons learned from previous mass casualties. Phase 2 will also include hearings from a range of witnesses, both individual and panels, like we have seen. However, the public will start to hear from people in other equally important ways. So presentations, roundtables, where subject matter experts share their insights on the particular issues that the Commission is addressing, as well as what we're calling small group sessions. And that's where people impacted by the mass casualty can share their experiences. These roundtables and small group discussions are non-adversarial opportunities to hear first voice experiences. The mandate of the Commission requires not just an examination of the facts, but an exploration of the human impact of the mass casualty. And so by hearing from those who have lived through these experiences, the commissioners can hear firsthand about some of the gaps, some of the barriers, some of the difficulties people encountered, all of which can help them formulate their recommendations to help make Canadians safer in the future. Next slide, please. sorry, next slide as well, sorry. Commissioned reports. Again, you can see sort of the topics where we'll be doing a much deeper discussion. The Commission has commissioned over 20 expert reports in various areas that address its mandate. These reports are listed on our website under our Documents tab, Research and Commissioned Reports. So on there you can see a short description of each report that we will be submitting as part of our work, as well as the authors. And so I've gone through that pretty quickly, but I want to get to the rest of it and turn it over to Emily to talk about our interim report.
Sure. So next slide, please. So just in the same vein of giving you a heads up about what's coming up next, part of the Order in Council requires the Commission to produce an interim report from May 1st. So that's coming up in the next few weeks. The interim report will outline the steps that we've taken so far and what our plan is to continue through to the end of our mandate. The interim report won't contain any recommendations because we're still so much right in the middle of our work and so much in the middle of our learning. And so the final report will be the place that you will see the Commission's findings of fact, and also its recommendations that are focused on keeping communities safer and building on what we've learned and what changes we can make. The interim report will will give us that information about where we are now and where we're going. But because following the interim report in the coming months, there'll still be so many opportunities for participants and the public to engage in the work and offer their own insights, you won't be seeing those recommendations in the interim report. I think Sarah's going to speak next about community outreach, if I've got that right.
Thank you, Emily. I know I'll go to the next slide. Quickly, please. And I know we're coming up on time, but just always want to touch on our community outreach. So as mentioned, our proceedings are public. We held open houses previously. We also had a survey in the spring and this winter where people could submit what their experience was. And so we'll review those and consider them in our recommendations as well. And we're very thankful for everybody who submitted over 800 responses. In the coming weeks, this week or next, we're also going to be, we'll have a portal on our website for public submissions. If members of the public want to provide recommendations they think should be considered by the Commission or any research or information that they think the Commission should have, and that will be open throughout the summer. So keep an eye for that on our website. As always, our proceedings are live webcast, and there's also a call-in line if people don't have reliable internet that's available as well, and they're posted after the fact. And we do anticipate more public engagement opportunities through the summer and the fall, and always have our general information email and our phone number in case anybody ever has any questions. We do check those very regularly and follow up. So I'm just aware of our time, so I'll go to the next slide. We can never speak about our work without the focus on wellness. The Commission is not a service provider, and nor should it be, but we do take our role very seriously in helping support everybody directly involved in our work to find the supports they need, and also have resources available on our website to connect. And we've been working really closely with community groups and mental health providers, service providers in Nova Scotia and across the country. So you'll find all that on the wellness page of our website. And just if we could go to the next.
Sarah, if I could just, don't worry about the time. We're not going to cut you off. We want to hear this. So please feel free to say what you need to say. Thank you.
Great. That's good to know. Thank you. I'll start talking a little bit slower. So yeah, all to say on our website, there is wellness resources as well as contact information for services available. It doesn't have to be crisis service, also just ongoing grief, mental health support, community. We've been working really closely in Nova Scotia with 211, and they are the primary portal, and will connect people directly with supports that are needed. We will go to the next slide, which is just highlighting that information. So we are on Facebook and Twitter. Our website has a trove of information, including, as Barb and Emily mentioned, over 700 documents that have been released through our public proceedings. And our contact information is always there too if anyone has any questions at any time. So I do think that wraps up our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions if you have any.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I think everybody's aware of the great deal of work that is going into this and how important it is, for the province, for the families, for everybody. That Nova Scotia hasn't experienced many things like that. So the work's very important. So I wonder if anybody has, any councillors have questions that they'd like to ask. You can just let me know in the chat line. Councillor Hensby.
Thank you much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is a very difficult assignment that these people have been chosen to help out with in regards to the mass casualty. I think we're all been struck, dumbfounded, and everything else from 2 years ago, the events that happened. And I happen to know Gabriel Wardman a minimum of 3 or 4 times through family, friends, and stuff. I find it very difficult to think of what had gone through his mind and other things like that over the last few months and days and hours leading up to the tragic events. I'm just kind of curious, is the committee plan to call all the witnesses that are related to this particular case, or just select few in regards to particular aspects? Because I know from some of the connections that I know, there is some very relevant information that may be discussed, and I wasn't sure if there's going to be a full review of all witnesses or just a select few.
I can answer that, and my colleagues can jump in if they have anything. Thanks for the question. And I think that your question shows I think everywhere we go in Nova Scotia and everyone we talk to, it's only 1 or 2 or 3 degrees of separation from this event. You either know people who are directly affected or, a service provider. So I hear that in your question, and I think that's been really common in our conversations with people. With regard to witnesses, one of the reasons that the Commission has chosen to use foundational documents is because it would just be impossible for us to hear publicly from every witness who had something to tell us about this event, either by being directly involved or having past knowledge, for example, of the perpetrator, or having knowledge of the events as they unfolded. We would still be, frankly, hearing from the witnesses that related to the first foundational document. So each document often summarizes and then cites, to dozens of documents. And so we're able to share all of that information with the public without having to hear from each individual witness. The other benefit of that, of course, is that this is a very difficult topic. And it may not be that every one person has shared information with us, for example, in an interview, or has already shared important information through an interview with the RCMP. We can share that information without having to go through the process of asking them the same questions again, or asking them the same questions in a public way. That said, there are some questions that need to be discussed with witnesses in public. And so we've already had a number of witnesses to discuss areas where there may be ongoing gaps or questions, where the personal experiences of people provide really important context to understand what happened. In those sort of circumstances, we will be hearing from witnesses. So I think what we're doing with regard to how we're sharing the information is sharing information that comes to us in lots of different ways. In a court of law, you would have to call a witness up and they would have to give their information on the stand, whereas we're able to rely on transcripts and interviews and other documents. And so we're doing that because it allows us to rely on a lot more information and share a lot more information. So we will be hearing from a number of witnesses through the whole process, but we will also hear voices in other formats, as Barb said. So roundtables, for example, where people can discuss their experience, discuss what happened to them, share that information. It's part of the record of the Commission and can be relied on by the commissioners as they write their final report. But it doesn't necessarily need to be sort of formal examination and cross-examination because it's not really being called for that same purpose. So the commission, as the public inquiry, we have a lot more tools available to us than we would in some of the more constrained legal processes. To your point around there may be still other information out there that we need to collect. I would be remiss if I didn't voice what Barb often says in these, which is our investigation is ongoing. So if people have information to share with us, we can still hear it. We can still set up a meeting with our investigator. We are still identifying witnesses who we may want to hear from in these public proceedings. So please do get in touch with us if there's information that you or your constituents or people in your community know about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you so much. Thanks for this presentation. I am so grateful that you were able to be here today and walk us through this really heavy, intense process. You know, there's a lot of moving pieces here. And so I just wanted to extend my gratitude to you for the work that you're doing. I guess the feedback that I have for you for the commission on this report is what I think might be a gap. And it may be a gap in the way that it's been presented through this presentation, or it may be something that the commission itself hasn't really found a way to explore. And the gap is children. Children process information very differently than adults. And in particular, children process trauma and traumatic events very differently. We know that through healthcare and mental health care services in the province, we haven't really hit a good spot where kids are receiving or even have the ability to receive any kind of services for mental health, in particular in rural areas. And so when I look at the commission reports, the one thing that I'm seeing is a gap in realizing that we need to also be speaking to youth, and whether that's through some kind of a, I don't know, school system or communicating, sorry about that, or communicating with, the various school boards or the Department of Education. But I do think it's important that we realize that this is impacting kids significantly. So I just wanted to ask whether or not you have considered that. Has that been a conversation around the table? Is there something that we can look forward to, whether it's information packages, some kind of a module for teachers to present in their schools, assemblies, that kind of thing? Because as you move through this process and it becomes more and more, in the public through the community consultation process, I think it's important for us to recognize that kids are going to process that trauma differently. Thank you.
Who would like that?
I'll start. Thank you for pointing that out. We do have a director of mental health, Mary Peisch, and she's in that role because she has deep understanding of mental health services here in Nova Scotia. So I will definitely be taking your suggestion back to her so that we can consider it and be a little bit more overt in our efforts in that area. So I want to thank you for your suggestion.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I'll just add to that as well, just so as information, we've also been meeting with community sector groups across the province, as I mentioned, including a youth network of organizations that work with youth, including the IWK and a number of others. And so we have, and the schools. So we have been connecting with them and trying to provide as much information as we can. And on our website, there's also some resources from the IWK specifically for parents and caregivers in speaking with youth and some resources for children and youth as well.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to those who presented to us here this morning. Just a comment, I'm so glad to see that there's a focus on wellness with this topic. It's pretty difficult to deal with, I would think, day after day. And your commitment is for a fairly long period of time. I just wondered if there is any focus on wellness for the journalists and reporters who are covering this topic, because they also get exposed to it and may not necessarily have a lot of supports. Thank you.
I can probably jump in on that one. So we have been working really closely with media, and we appreciate all of their work. And for many of them, they were there before we were. They were there at the time, day of. And so we have worked with them. We provide documents in advance for them so that they can review and process, which was partly for them to wrap their heads around all of the information as well and be able to report, and also so they can sort of plan and don't have to be on the fly. And I know there was also in leading up to the beginning of our public proceedings, we did discuss sort of what was coming up with media, and that's been a big part of our efforts, working with community groups and media, and everybody is making sure people know what to expect so they can prepare and plan. And there was an organization, and the name is escaping me right now, but that did do a session for journalists on mental health and on resilience and tools when they're working with this kind of information. So we've been working with them as much as we can, and we know that they all take that very seriously as well.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like you're setting a new standard in the way that you're approaching this. Very considerate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, folks, I want to thank the commissioners. You mentioned that everybody in this province has a connection to this, whether they knew people or not who were killed by this person. Certainly, Councillor Purdy represents an area where Constable Heidi Stevenson lived. I knew Heidi. I know her husband, Dean, and she's a true hero in this. But everybody who's gone through this process has had to overcome incredible difficulty, and the sensitivity with which you handle it is really important. So the last time I heard from you, I had asked if there was anything we could do, and I think somebody suggested maybe you could come to one of the committees of council, and that's where we are today. So I want to thank you for that. Emily Hill, Barbara McLean, Sarah Simpson. We also extend our best regards to everybody on the commission, the commissioners, and everybody else. Look forward to the interim report on May the 1st, and you can know that you're making a difference for Nova Scotians, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you very much for joining us today. I don't know if you have any last words.
Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Also, just to thank you, this is not a one and done. You know, if there are questions that you are receiving from your constituents, from your communities, please share this deck with members of your communities so that they can have the information as well, and channel any questions towards us.
Okay, if you could just hold on one sec. We do have one more question from Councillor Purdy.
No, I apologize. I don't have a question, but I thank you for this presentation.
Okay, I misread that. Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much for joining us, and we wish you the best as you continue your work.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Colleagues, we'll go from presentations to information items brought forward. None. There are no reports, staff or committee or motions. We do have some in camera. Does anybody want to try any of the in camera? Perhaps the in camera minutes to begin with, 14.1.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. I'll
Moved by
second them.
Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Mason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Or anybody want to go in camera on that? Thank you. That passes. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, I'll try 14.2.
14.2. Is the committee ready to entertain that? There is an item I want to discuss in camera, so we are going to be going in camera. But if folks want 14.2, Councillor Hensby, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Motion is that the Executive Standing Committee one adopt the recommendations outlined in the private confidential staff report dated April 14th, 2022, and two, and direct that the private confidential staff report dated April 14th, 2022 be maintained private and confidential.
Second.
Second by Councillor Mason. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? 14.2 is carried. 14.3 or 14.4?
I'll test the will of committee on the 14.3. Does anybody wish to discuss that in camera or not?
Yeah, I'll ask that before we read the motion. Does anybody want to discuss 14.3 in camera?
No.
Pardon me? No? Okay, Councillor Hensby, go ahead.
I move that the Executive Standing Committee adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential staff report dated April 19th, 2022, and 2, direct that the staff report dated April 19th, 2022 be maintained as private and confidential.
Seconded.
Second by the Councillor Blackburn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. I do want to discuss 14.4 in camera. Does somebody want to propose we move in camera to discuss that?
So moved.
Councillor Russell?
Second.
By Councillor Blackburn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll go in camera. We have a separate in-camera meeting, I'm sure. Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. We're going to be locking down mics and cameras here, putting up the in-camera slide. And if you please join via the Teams meeting invitation that was sent to you separately.
All right, we'll see you on the other side.
Sorry, it looks as though we are good. You just need to go over to the in-camera side. So you should leave this meeting. No, you currently are in the, yeah, you and yeah, folks, the mayor is still in the public meeting. So Mr. Mayor, if you're able to hear me either or, there we go. And Marty, I'm still showing you as in the public meeting as well. Yes. I'm gonna remove you. You should be able to join back into Zoom with no issue. I can hear you, Mr. Mayor, and everything looks good from the public side. You're good, Marty. Yeah. Mr. Mayor, we are returning the ability to unmute as well as returning cameras, and I will ask that the screen be removed.
Thank you. Okay, we're good to go. All right. We're back. Item 14.4, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I move that we defer item 14.4.
Second that. Councillor
Second by
Russell.
Councillor Russell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries. No added items, notices of motion. Public participation. I guess you would have had to sign up by yesterday. Date of next meeting will be, for now, May the 30th, which leads me to believe I may not, well, we'll see, may not be here. I'll accept a motion to adjourn, colleagues.
Motion to adjourn. Mayor.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
See you, folks.